Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to today's PETinar. You are very welcome. We have two extremely eminent guests with us today, whose combined experience in the industry, in the PET industry in Europe, is pretty impressive. If there has been an initiative in PET in Europe over the last 10 years, then you will find that one or other or both of these gentlemen have been involved. We have Casper van den Dungen, who jointly founded the European Plastics Recyclers Association in 1999, president of PRE EUPR and chairman of the PET working group. And since 2013, he's been involved in Petcore Europe's technical committee and board of directors. Dr. Paolo Glerian has been with Aliplast SPA since 2011, and he's currently head of sales and marketing and responsible for business development and institutional affairs, among other things. I'll go into more detail later as I introduce them individually. The subject today is really about recycling PET and building towards a circular economy. As you can see from the background on Paolo and Casper's slides, it's about recyclass. We're talking about recycling PET, building the circular economy, building capacity, and technical and development trends in the business. First up, we're having Casper van den Dungen. He's going to talk about driving circularity of the PET industry in Europe. As I said, he jointly founded the European Plastics Recyclers Association. He says that PET recycling has been his work and his hobby for more than 30 years. And if I was to recite all the positions he has held in the organizations he founded or co-established, there would actually be no time left for the presentation. So I'm going to hand over to Casper right away for his presentation, Driving Circularity of the PET Industry in Europe. Casper, over to you.
Yes, thanks very much for this nice introduction. Too many nice words. Everything works fine. I think you see already my presentation. I take control right now. You still have a full screen. So I have a lot of slides, and if you ask me to do a presentation, normally I talk too long. So I have my best intention to be as quick as possible. I think the presentation will be available later on, so you can always read there. So I will focus on the majority points which I haven't put in writing in this presentation. Driving circularity PET industry, that's the first introduction. First, to also make clear that I'm representing the two associations which are behind me, Petcore and PRE. This is where we are. We are a leading voice in making plastic circular in Europe. For some numbers, for you to understand, PRE has more than 150 companies and organizations, and we have already experienced for more than 25 years as an organization. We have treating all plastic waste in our group, and we are covering roughly with our members and associations more than 80% of the market. Today we will focus a little bit more on PET, and we have a clear vision in making plastic circular for all plastics. And it's the typical cycle you see here. Starts with design, recycle, collection, sorting, cycling, and uptakes. So we want to advance this circularity, improve the recyclability of all plastics, harmonize it as much as we can, and to create also a genuine transition, because that's what we all have to do. We have to change our normal behavior, and we have to adapt a little bit to the circular economy. As I said, we're going to zoom in more on PET recycling. In the past, it was fibers, strapping, and clothing. Today, the packaging is the biggest outlet, and the circularity is the most visual in this, which already will be presented later on. With this, I give you an overview about the collection until year to date. Like in 2020, we have managed to collect up to 61% of the bottles. The graph continues for the future, where you see the targets, 77% and 90% collection. And the arrow indicates that with the DRS, we try to ramp up this huge increase because we talk about a tremendous increase in volumes, which we have to be according to legislative situations. We count that the status of affairs is that we have roughly 4.6 million metric tons, million tons PET in the industry. And the DRS, the deposit return system, today, out of the 19 members, there is half of it which will join in at higher levels in the next couple of years. This is a wrong mistake. This is a mistake, I guess. 19 members. They have to place it by 2025. That's correct. It's only today 10 or 7 which are doing there, and and out of 7, there's 83% of 83%, which is the highest level of those 7. But to get to this big number of collections, we need to more than double in the next couple of years, and that's the challenge of the whole industry, where my presentation is a little bit focused on, to see how can we double just this. By saying it, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of balancing what we have to do to make that happening. Departing from the collection, it's that the capacity we already has installed a lot of the material which is collected, by the way. Being there in the market for more than 30 years, it's always that capacity has been higher than the collection. And in this, you see that Germany is a country where there is a deposit already for many years, and therefore there's also the highest capacity which we have in Europe. Then this is a slide where we also see the past on the left-hand side of the graph, and the future to the right-hand side. It is that it's middle and small maybe for you to see. It is the capacity which is installed, which is always higher as the collection, as I told you before. And the little the light color under the dark color is the quantity which we have done into recycled. Wait a second. This is it is used in the PET bottles. So it is a growing amount. We have to go to this 30% by 2030. But you see that it is it needs a big step up for this. We also have this development of sheets, which have to go also in recycling material. And I said before, we will adapt with the DRS to try to get to these big volumes. Although tray-to-tray is relatively new, we see already new projects in the Netherlands, France, and Belgium to ramp up. As this is a relatively new system, we need to learn to get this adaptation from the design for recycling, which we come back to like later. If you have an easy design, it's an easy recycling job. If you have a difficult design, it's more difficult, but we will elaborate more on that. As for the next point, the end markets, we already established roughly 27% into food contacts. The typically situation in the past was that we washed the bottles and we start washing the trays, and then we sold the flakes, which could directly go into those applications, which would be strapping, injection molding, sheet, etc., where sheet was the major application. But then we started repelletizing and make it food grade, and now we have in blow molding already 32% of the total market installed. So it's an add-on to the washing. If you talk about recycling, you typically talk from waste to flakes. That's what recycling is, because it gets from waste into an end product. The added on to repelletize the material and make it food grade is already a raw material. We're just making it more pure and keep it into the legislative requirements for food grade. What has happened in the last couple of years is that you see an overview about multiple years where this is a spread between, let's say, the flake prices and the virgin prices. And in the past, it was always that flakes were cheaper and virgin was more expensive. But now you see this huge development, that this scarcity of raw material, of recycled raw material is there, and we see a huge ramp up. That the spread is that we have sold the flakes already to a higher price than virgin. So if you add on another cost for repelletizing, then the price would be even more higher. And this is a structural change due to supply demand, which is developed in the last couple of years, and which we need to try to balance out by collecting more to make more material available. The barriers as we see it up to now is in the next slide is a summary which gives us the challenges for the future development. It's a long list, but it all ends up a little bit. It's like I have here a summary of 5 points. So it has to do with the collection. It's not sufficient. Some of the collection is low qualities. Therefore, it's difficult to really get all this, let's say, waste out to make it to the highest quality, which we have to take. We have to do extra sorting. There is a lack of capacity of really quality recycling. I mean, just doing from a very dirty material to a very food grade material with a very high application is a challenge. Definitely, if people want to have 100%. And we see still that in the collection, we have still a lot of designs which are not yet ready for recycling. And we have to carry them together with the materials and the collection systems we have today. And this is where our transition have to work also on, to take out this, I call it a little bit of slow down products. We have to master a better development for circularity to make it more flow and more easily to get to the quality and to simplify and standardize a little bit. As for the uptake, even with this not ideal situation, we have managed to create recycling contents with mechanical recycling by 100% use of it. But that at the end we don't collect 100%. So how can we sustain that long term? I have my doubts about it. As every country likes to have its own nationality, it also has its own way of collecting it. So we still have a lack of implementation of harmonization and standards in collecting, processing, and using this. So all this needs to be developed towards a more circular and a more programmable future, so that whatever is in the past, we know it exactly how it's made, we know how we can sort it, we know how we can recycle it, and that we have a good quality. So these are the barriers which we have to work on. So I would like to go now in a little bit using those key drivers and give more explanation on what we can do. These key drivers, as I said, all those phases in the circularity has a guideline by legislative framework. We have these targets. I come back to it later, but it is the chain, and it's the weakest parts in the chain which is making our life more easy or less easy or successful, whatever you want to take it. It is this doing it together and working together where we have to adapt between each of those individual stages of the circularity to optimize this system. And this needs a lot of communication and needs a lot of adaptation and time. So I don't want to take long for the design of recycling. Paolo will continue to do that a lot. I mean, we have to find the right suitable cap. We have to know what kind of inks we need to use. We like light colors, and we like no additives inside. That's the basically. And what we are doing at Recyclas is to do an assessment on a simulation. If you would use the things you have chosen, does it work out right or not right? Paolo will go in more to details. And as we want to program the future, we really have to look what each of us is contributing to program this right. This slide, Paolo will touch on it as well, but I'm called sometimes Mr. Definition. I think what we still don't know, we have these targets, which I come back to in a minute, but the recyclability is only happening if we really do it. It's not that you can prove a product. Paolo will also talk about it. But recycling content, that's even a more difficult situation where I said the legal framework is there, what our targets are. But the fact if people can, let's say, use 25% of their bottles to put 100% inside, and then the other 75% to do nothing, and then said, in the end, I've succeeded my target of 25%. These are things which are still not yet defined by law and by methodologies of systems. And also, how do you get this traceability on, is it post-consumer what you're using? That are important points which we have to really control very much, because we're now starting collecting a lot and we want to do it right. And to make 100%, the quality levels are much more extreme, and if we only want to put in 25% in a long-term sustainable package. So with that, traceability is the most key point. PET has been, I call it a little bit discriminated. It's nice that we have now our targets, that we have to go to the 30% content. It drives the market, as you've seen it in the past, and we'll do it in the future. So we have this specific PET situation in the law, where a single plastic directive or plastic directive, that are points which we have to take in account, and we are following it. And it takes years to do that. But in the next slide, I have this situation where personally I've been involved in the 282/2008, the food law for direct food contact. It's 2008, so it tells you when we started discussing about it. We have now 2022 and we still don't have an active situation on it. And what is difficult for the industry in the moment is that we have to prove that we are doing and working according to the law, but we don't have yet the harmonization. It was decided in 2008, but now we still don't have it. So it was promised as many years before that this year it will work. Now we have a recast. It gets a new challenge. I think it has a modification, to be honest, that novel technologies is now included. Novel technologies is the situation where chemical recycling has also created a foundation in the legislation to get cleared by the law how to do it. But I think there are still some kind of uncertainties about it, how they really can manage the time frame. But let's see how this will develop, and then I hope that we can get it clear by the end of the year, so that everybody knows what legal constraints we have in our investments, which we have to honor for making a sustainable circularity. The other laws which we have here is the Waste Framework Directive, Waste Shipment Regulation, and Packaging Waste Directive. They also have specific points on PET, which are, some of them are under revision, and we always have to watch out if we have targets in the future that we can manage that. What we know by now is that the DRS is the way forward. I have these boxes in green, orange, black and red. On the left, you have the ones where we have established already since many years an experienced operation of good collection. The orange is the challenge. You see how many countries there are in 2022 these years. I think Scotland is the most eminent, which will work. I think that all the others, maybe Malta is also working, but the others, there is still a vague situation. So this is what I'm trying to address also in this presentation, that although there's a huge potential, if it would work tomorrow, we have to be prepared. But if it doesn't work, we cannot be prepared, as it takes 2 years to build a wash line with all the legal constraints, etc. These are challenges for the future. And if you see how many countries and the volumes involved, that you have return rates of up to 90%, it's a huge capacity planning which has to be secured in a clear development of going forward in circularity. So this is the points which are important. We have some developments on the technologies. Doing this for 30 years is a nice slide. We did some hand sorting when I started, but today it's all sorting by machines. We are working with artificial intelligence already. We have several labels which help us to identify food and non-food situations. So we have a huge situation in sorting, washing. It's also interesting to see the economy of scale increasing, and in extrusion we have also optimized our situation. So I think we have done a tremendous job, and thanks for the European suppliers, because Europe is leading in this technology, and that's helpful for making this also more circular in Europe. I'm getting to the last couple of slides of this presentation. So how do I see the future? I think that the plastic recycling is still part of the puzzle. Of course, we have to prevent, we have to reuse, and we have to recycle, but the redesign, I think, is the most eminent one we have to focus on. And this brings me to the first last slide, is that to meet this 90% collection rate, we have to do a tremendous expansion on the washing, at least 1/3. And this 1/3 is then, in the next slide, it's a really balancing act. And that's what I would like to end this presentation with, is that we have countries involved, the list I showed you. Is there a sufficient infrastructure? If not, we have to build it. It takes 2 years. We have to make sure the timing is right, because we have to make the wash lines available or convert the old wash lines. There is technology development, there is uncertainty in the legal constraints, and we have to make sure that what is the market really asking for. So this all balancing act for all those points is a challenging situation for us in the future, but I think we are good there as an industry to manage this, but we have to talk to each other and try to program this right. The missing link in this pre-last slide is the design for recycling, which Paulo is going to talk more about. My last slide is to thank you and to make notice of the point that if you want to read more about what we have done in the last 25 years, there is a report available on the PETcore websites, which also ends up this summary of my presentation. Thanks, and looking forward to your questions in the next future.
Okay, thanks, Casper. Thank you very much indeed for an interesting chat. And I see there's a little applause sign, or several little applause signs appearing at the bottom of the screen there. Thank you. I can see that there are some questions coming through already. Please use the chat function, which you can see towards the top of your screen, to submit your questions. What we will do is we will take them all at the end, after Paulo has spoken. So we get everything together, but it's good to see that they're appearing already. Now, thank you for outlining the challenge, Casper. It seems to be that it's the collection and recycling infrastructure that is the real challenge. We're talking about the population being pretty willing, but the industry not so much. It seems to be lacking, particularly in the washing area, as you said. We have got some excellent technology from people like Tomra, who had mentioned in some of your slides there. And I think the technology is really rather good and is getting better and better. But it is the capacity that is the issue at this time. 14 years on from 2008, and we still haven't got everything sorted. It must be a bit disappointing for somebody like yourself who's been a pioneer of recycling for so long. But we'll get back to this, and we'll have a chance for you to answer the questions that are coming up at the end. Paulo, we're turning now to Dr. Paulo Glarian, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, who has been with Aliplast SPA in Italy since 2011. He's currently head of sales and marketing and responsible for business development and institutional affairs. He's been a board member of Plastic Recyclers Europe Association since 2012 and is chair of the Recyclability platform. And he holds a number of other senior positions and is co-chair of Petcore Europe's PET Trays working group, a post he has held since 2015. He's past president and has been vice president of PET Sheet Europe since January 2019. He's going to talk about recyclers and building a circular plastics packaging future, and specifically addressing trends in virgin and recycled PET market. Over to you, Paulo. Remember to switch your microphone on.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice introduction. So part of my presentation has been already introduced by Casper, and I will touch here what could be the contribution of the Recyclability platform to the circularity of, I would say, plastic packaging in general, and and of course PET especially. So basically, starting from the first point, what is the mission and vision of Recyclass is making plastic circular by ensuring all products are recyclable and promoting transparent uptake of recycled content. Then one thing that should be clear is that Recyclass is a cross-value chain platform, and is made out of two different pillars. One is on recyclability and one is on recycled content. I will touch both points today. So this is the list of the members, as you can see, and as I was just mentioning, this is a cross-value chain initiative. So you see brands and retailers participating in this platform. You see quite a lot of converters. You see also raw material producers and supporters, which usually are associations. Let's start with the design for recycling and how this can, I would say, improve the circularity of plastic packaging and especially PET. So first of all, I would say let's start from the definition of circularity, because I guess the definition, or at least the word circular or circularity, is probably being too much abused in these times. So we use that definition, the one from Ellen MacArthur Foundation 2015, where circular economy is the one which is restorative and regenerative by design, and aims to keep products, components, and materials at their highest utility and value at all times. What does it mean in terms of plastics? So a plastic item should be recycled in a high-end application, which to some extent is keeping the value of this plastic at the highest level. Of course, a closed-loop system to some extent, it could be intended as the highest application of this definition, but of course also the possibility of having multiple step cascades is also trying to keep this value at a high level, which is not the case when you just downcycle the plastic, not in multiple step cascades. Having this in mind, what we do in Recyclass is, of course, trying to create some kind of references and standards in order to support the industry in keeping the value of their item at the highest level in the different cascades and in different life stages of the plastics in the different applications. Here's the definition of recyclability, which is a definition that has been agreed between the European plastic recyclers and the American plastic recyclers. There are 4 pillars in that. First of all, the product, the plastic item must, of course, must be made with plastics, which is collected for recycling. So the first important pillar is that this plastic must be collected for recycling. Then specific item must be sorted and aggregated into defined streams, of course, to feed recycling processes. The third pillar is that these recycling processes should be able to process these kind of items at commercial scale. So not kind of lab scale or maybe just some kind of attempts, but on a real industrial scale. And at the end, to close the loop, the recyclates should be used or must be used in the production of new products. If you meet all these 4 criteria, then this is what makes basically your product recyclable. How Recyclass is working. So I used to say that this is a kind of iceberg, I would say, where the bottom part that you can't see, I would say, from outside, are the testing protocols. Testing protocols are some kind of standard procedures for testing, and which are replicating what usually is happening in a real recycling plant, but in a lab scale environment. And in this case, there is a comparison of properties between a product or material which is known as being perfectly recyclable compared with the material that you are testing. And in this case, running the protocols, we have protocols for more or less all the different type of packaging, and running the protocol, then you will start in different stages measuring the different deltas between the reference, which you know is perfectly recyclable, and and the mix of these, I would say, reference material with the innovation or the material you are testing. And in that case, you can test what is the influence of this specific product you are evaluating in a perfectly recyclable stream. Of course, if there's no I would say differences, or at least no delta performances, then you can assume that the product you are testing is perfectly recyclable. While if you are having some delta performances, then you can, of course, understand how much this the introduction of this specific product in a recycling stream can affect the, I would say, the quality of that recycling stream. Then you can start understanding if this is a limited compatible with recycling, or in a worst case, when it's really, I would say, putting at risk the recyclability. And on the results of this testing protocol, which have been also validated by with peer review from some academics. And so we basically feed and maintain design for recycling guidelines. The structure of design for recycling guidelines is quite easy. And let me see if I have, okay. So, and then there's a structure. So you have the list of components of a plastic packaging, which are listed here. So you have the body, then you can have color, caps, labels. And for every one of these, I would say, items, you have a list which is green, of green design choices, which are the ones not affecting recyclability, so fully compatible with recycling. Then you have an amber column where there are listed the design choices which are limited compatible, so meaning that to some extent recyclers can cope with that, but they will affect to some extent the quality of the recyclates. And then you have the red column where there are listed the design choices which are heavily affecting recyclability until making recyclability not, I would say, possible at all. And this is the middle part, I would say, of the iceberg, where the peak of the iceberg, maybe the visible part, is the recyclability assessment. So basically, you can do it with an online tool, which is published on www.recyclas.eu, and you just register. It's completely free. Then you do your self-analysis. You will get answer question by several questions, a list of questions with multiple answers, replying to that specifically, referring to a specific part packaging you would like to check and to assess. You will be guided, by the tool, and at the end you will receive two informations: the recyclability class, which goes from A to F. A is the best, F is the worst, and also the indication of what you have to change in order to improve the recyclability. And then you can also get this certified. Of course, behind this evaluation, which is quite, I would say, synthetic, you have some design for recycling guidelines, which is a pretty complex, I would say, technical instrument. And then behind this, you have the testing protocol. This is the structure. So you have the different classes. Of course, the presentation will be available later on. You can read in each of them what it refers to. And then the methodology, which is behind the tool. So you have these 5 different stages you have to go through in order to get the full evaluation on the recyclability of your item. Then you can get your self-assessment certified by an external auditor, which will give you a qualitative assessment, just checking if your answer was has been the proper ones, and then confirming your class. Or you can get a quantitative assessment, which will turn also this evaluation in a percentage, and which is country-specific, because it contains also information about the specific European country you are putting your packaging in. This is a pretty complex, I would say, formula, which starts from 100% recycling. Then you start from collection, and depending, of course, if you don't have collection in that specific area you would like to check, then of course it is 0. So at the end, your rating will be 0. Or you move, if it is collected, it will keep 100, and you go to the sortability. There is a sortability procedure which gives you a percentage of sortability of your packaging that will be multiplied by this 100 and so on. Then you have the design for recycling to be checked. And then at the end, also the ability of your recyclates to replace virgin, which makes the last step of the evaluation. All this formula leads to a specific percentage of recyclability, which is reported in the certification. Then the point is how to claim recyclability. And of course, in this case, starting from the design for recycling guidelines, you have the tool and then you can have the certification. I will get back to this point and how to make I would say, some fair communication on that. This will be covered by a later slide. We have several other certification bodies that already participate to a training course organized by Recyclars, and they have already been approved as certification bodies for the Recyclars methodology. You will see all methodologies, guidelines, and so on published in the website of Recyclars, and so that they are covering more or less all the European area. And what we do in terms of, I would say, PET. So we cover with our guidelines the PET bottles, and we are linked to a PBP in this case, and we are also participating in technical committees of a PBP, and we are also cooperating with the PBP. I'll talk later on about that. And also we cover clear PET trays in the same way. In this case, clear PET trays are managed by the PET thermoforms working group under Petcore Europe. Then I would like to move to the second pillar, which is the recycled content, how we can help and support the circularity of, I would say, not PET, even if today we're just discussing PET, but of the overall, I would say, plastics. In this case, we developed a scheme on how to certify the recycled content in all the plastics applications. Of course, the reason of that is to give, I would say, a robust background to the claims on the recycled content. Because, of course, if a brand is claiming on a package that this has 80%, 90%, 30% recycled content, there should be a robust background to make sure that this is exactly representing the reality and it is not a fake information. Of course, there are coming also several regulation on national level that will make these kind of things mandatory, and of course, then robustness is key. So the focus, of course, is to track the recycled content in the overall supply chain. And the concept we use to develop our scheme is the chain of custody concept. So starting from a recycler, of course, and with the traceability certification, we go through all the supply chain to the compounder, converter, and producer. And at the end, with the full traceability of all the supply chain, then we can give, I would say, a robust background to the recycled content claim. We work also with an approach of control blending, which is described in this ISO norm, and of course tracking all these different stages of the supply chain. We track also, I would say, the batches of the recyclates and how they are treated in the different stages that could be compound or converting. And in that case, if there's some blending, then we track the blending, and at the end we can we can clearly understand and prove the share of recycled content in the specific application. Of course, the focus, as is written there, is the physical presence of recyclates. So we are talking about attribution or something. It must be a physical presence proven by a traceability concept. Of course, these are the challenges and risks in case you don't have, I would say, such a robust scheme. Of course, it's free allocation of recycled content like self-declarations, these kind of things. And also, I mean, having a self-declaration and not having a full traceability of the value chain will make, in any case, your claim not as robust as it should be. And of course, this is something that must be avoided. Otherwise, even the credibility, I would say, of the plastic industry will start having more probably issues than what they are having today. So the Recyclable system to trace the recycled content has received the accreditation from the European accreditation scheme, the one in Belgium, by the way. So then the system has been proven and accredited according to ISO 17065, which means proving, I would say, the robustness of the system and the fact that this delivering, I would say, a high level of credibility because of the internal procedures. And of course, this has been already included in the list of certification schemes which are considered by the CPA in order to make claims. And of course, this is also helping companies to show even to the CPA their commitment and the real, I would say, use of recycled content according to their commitments. Also, in this case, we have several certification bodies that have been trained and accredited for the Recyclable auditing scheme, and so they are covering a large part of Europe, as you can see here. One thing which is very important with this, I would like to close my part. In case, of course, you invested, of course, in design for recycling with a robust system, which is helping, of course, and improving, I would say, circularity of your products and packages. If you also invested in certifying your recycled content with a robust scheme, then at the end, you of course can claim this. But the way on how claims are done is not to some extent regulated by no one. And today you see quite a lot of greenwashing going on, which of course requires much less investment than doing the right things. And so we have within the Recyclable structure, we also have a task force which is participated by most of the brands I've listed before. And we are creating a kind of I would say, way or at least guideline on how to claim both recyclability and recycled content in order to have a kind of level playing field when you come to communicate both recyclability and recycled content. And in this case, you can also download this from the Recyclable website. Of course, the idea is that if we have some common rules that we commit to, then of course, in this case, we also will communicate in a most, I would say, fair way these informations. And last but not least, how we do cooperate with the rest of the PET value chain. We cooperate, as I was mentioning, with the APBP, and Recyclable is carrying on several, I would say, assessments based on APBP guidelines and methodologies. And I would say that the ordinary evaluations are made by Recyclable, then it's just some specific part which stays into APBP. We also cooperate with Petcore Europe, especially for with the PET thermoforms working group and platform, which is evaluating specific cases of PET trays, and the guidelines we are using are the same, of course, developed by the Petcore Europe thermoforms platform. And in this case, of course, we are pretty well linked. We also participate in both APBP and Petcore trays technical committees, and there's, I would say, an ongoing exchange, I would say, of information and cooperation going on. That's all from my side. I'm more than happy in replying to your questions.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Paolo. That was great. That was very interesting. Now, there's something that I wanted to ask before we open it up generally to questions, and that is, there have been concerns expressed about the decline in the physical characteristics of plastics as they are recycled, as they go through the recycling process. You know, that the molecular resilience may be may decline or may be compromised. Now, is this well founded? Is it something that was in the past? Has it been superseded by by more recent technological developments, including, for example, chemical recycling?
Is it for me?
Oh yes.
Okay. No,
Sorry.
I would say talking about PET, I would say that, I mean, the fact that you have the possibility with the polycondensation to rebuild basically the polymer chain of PET, I would say that the degradation of the polymer is something that to some extent you can handle. And this is what also makes a big difference between PET and other polymers in the recycling stage. Of course, what is helping quite a lot, in my opinion, is also the improvement from a technology point of view of the different sorting technologies and also recycling technologies, because at the end of the day, what you have to control, if you start from a good feedstock, meaning PET bottles especially, then you have, of course, to clean up all this feedstock at the best you can do. And of course, every single stuff that you, or every single, I would say, pollution you can get into this stream will also have an effect on the quality of your recyclate that will stay in the loop. Of course, the best you can clean the feedstock, the best will be end quality. But in terms of polymer degradation, this is something that usually is managed by the SSP.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. That's a very comprehensive reply, and I am now much better informed than I was a few seconds ago. Thank you. So you mentioned greenwashing. You touched on greenwashing. It's not only a quality issue. It's a moral issue, and of course it's fraudulent as well, isn't it? You know, if people are claiming to do something that they're not actually doing, then you are going to get compromised polymers. You are going to get stuff that isn't actually food standard being mislabeled as food standard. And would it be fair to say that it should be as much of a priority for the authorities in Europe, the wider Europe, as counterfeiting?
I guess this is a very important point, but you start seeing in the next in the past couple of months that there have been some couple of huge, I would say, cases. I guess one was in Canada, maybe one in the UK, where the companies that they claim they made some kind of fake or unclear, I would say, advertising on their packaging, they got huge fines for that.
Yes.
And this is making clear that the communication must be fair. To me, how to create this kind of fairness was, to some extent, you have to refer to a standard, and that was one of the background why we created this kind of guidelines, because they are, I would say, created by the industry for the industry. The important point would be if, I would say, most of the companies will commit on the use of these this kind of rules, because in that case, this will make a real level playing field, which today is not in place.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Okay, Casper, welcome back for the Q&A session. And we had a few questions ratcheting up while you were speaking. And I'll go to one straight away with Rucha, who raised a question that other people have asked as well, is about rPET costs. Have they ramped up or have they become competitive with virgin PET because of the raw material shortage from 2020-21?
Typically we have customers which are so enthusiastic to use the recycled content. There is more or less a race who can use the most, and there the supply is too little, and therefore you get a typical supply-demand situation where people are asking for more and more and more, and then the highest will get it. And that's why we have seen it last year almost a doubling of the feedstock of us, which is really coming back from the lack of collection. If we would have more, then we would have supplied more and we could create it more in capacity. Other points which have increased the cost this year was coming back to the energy cost, where a lot of other companies also have to relate to, I guess. So, but it's a really supply-demand situation where we have come up to much higher levels than virgin in the last couple of years.
Okay, all right, and of course, the more that we can get coming into the stream, the lower the prices will fall. It's the other side of what you're talking about. You know, demand. If rising demand is met by rising supply, then the price will stabilize. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Mark has asked, what about digital DRS testing in Ireland? I don't know about that. I don't know if you do.
Me neither. It was an interesting question. I saw that too. So you can contact me and I would like to talk about it. I'm aware about a lot of developments, but this is a specific one. I had the question myself.
Okay, Mark, this is an opportunity for you to inform and educate the experts. Right, so if you follow that up, Kukuka Helvetia, I think that was covered during Casper's presentation. Chloe Kinera asks, what impact do you see from imports coming from outside Europe in reaching targets? Now, for a while, of course, China was importing a lot of recycled or used material from Africa. Which was very welcome because, of course, plastic was called the bloom of Africa. What are the opportunities to reverse the previous trend, which was to send it over to the Far East and out of sight, out of mind, to actually bring it back and make use of it?
Proximity is what we like to do with recyclers, because you have a lot. We have more than 100 recyclers in Europe, which are very close. Because they know what kind of bottles there are in the market, so they can react to that. The legal constraints or the legal obligations which people need to be aware if they start importing. I mean, definitely the price is now so high. Europe is becoming a Hoover of the global to get all the PET to Europe because they pay the highest price. So it's logical that people will do that because supply demand has to be come in balance. So the situation, what I would like to address is that legally, everybody who imports into Europe has to be REACH registered, because it has to be clear that whatever you put from outside of Europe into Europe needs to be registered. It can be not compliant, and if you are not compliant, then people need to catch you and need to understand what they can do with. So you have to do it normally by only representations in Europe. That's one affording point. Even though most of the collections are maybe for food grade packaging, it still needs to account with 10/2011. We have a positive listing where we can only use additives which are, let's say, approved for Europe. So there are maybe some additives which are approved in other countries which are not allowed here. So if they start importing it, it's making a mess of our feedstock because we don't know how to check that. Okay. The third point, which is also an important point for the food grade situation, is that the new legislation that I talked about, the 2008 recast, is also saying that all the feedstock which you can use has to come from a source which has a minimum of 95% food packaging, meaning less than 5% non-food packaging. If you start importing flakes, you cannot check this. So that's being difficult. So there are a lot of, let's say, constraints that we all have to be aware that if we start trying to make cheaper imports, we are also increasing the risks if we don't do it correctly.
Okay, Paolo, I would like you to bring you in on that, but actually we're a bit pressed for time. But it's pretty much the sort of points that you were making about quality and coming into the supply chain. Sebastian, very briefly, does either of you want to answer that? Why does Spain contribute such a high amount of rPET in Europe without having a DRS in place?
It's volume driven, and Spain is a big country, and the presentation was based upon what does one country contribute to in volume.
Okay, Zoltan Toronyi says, how does the recycling industry want to manage opaque bottles? More and more he thinks aren't particularly good, and do we have extended solutions for them?
It's a little bit chicken and the egg. So opaque has been, I mean, there were other examples in France for the last couple of years, and now you see some countries have already grown towards a specific quality. I mean, a recycler can only guarantee a solution to make a feedstock. I think every product you can make almost circular in a technical point of view. It's just that the economics have to be right. But if you don't have the source fixed, then how can you do this? So if you mix it in with green, then it's fluctuating between that level. And we now see that in Belgium we have a specific source coming up for opaque only. We will build on a solution on that, and other countries can follow if they have a specific source for colored material. Then we will find a solution for that.
Okay, thank you. Right, I think this one's really for you, Paolo. Is digital watermark technology of great interest in improving recycling?
Definitely yes. I mean, the idea of having the chance to embed the possibility to sort different, I would say, sort packaging usually for different, I would say, peculiarity they have. Just keep in mind food contact. Casper was mentioning that to produce rPET food grade, you need at least 95% of material coming from food grade applications. Of course, if you deal with bottles, could be easy because you just remove, I would say, non-beverages from beverages. You can do it by hand if it's not maybe the best in terms of cost efficiency. But think about trays. You have trays, blisters, and so on. So in that case, it will be crucial to enable, I would say, the possibility of creating specific food grade, I would say, or at least a stream of waste to be recycled in food grade application. And it is the same for polyolefins to some extent. So the answer is yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Dungen, I think we answered that question pretty much with the similar question asked about Spain. It's about the volume of the market, and that's what drives the higher collection rates. Good question from Zoltan, I think. Why do we use so many multi-layer PETs in the food sector without having proper recycling solutions for them?
First of all, packaging is not built up to be recycled. Packaging is built up to keep, I would say, the shelf life, in this case, of the foodstuff which is in. And of course, multi-layers usually have a functionality in terms of barrier properties, for instance, when you work with modified atmosphere packaging. And then you need these kind of, I would say, structures today to get the performance. What is the challenge for tomorrow, or at least to be tackled today to have a solution tomorrow, is to have some technical solutions which will give the same performance in terms of shelf life, having at the same time recyclability. Then you have two ways on how to approach that. One, with new technologies that will remove, I would say, the extra layers of, I would say, other polymers, or you can have different recycling technologies that can help to, for instance, to delaminate the different layers in order to have some kind of pure stream to be recycled. But I would say functionality is the key priority. Of course, just on the second level, we have recyclability. If we do the other way around, maybe I would say we will waste much more food stuff. We will recycle a bit more, but we will lose quite a lot of food stuff, which probably will make the general, I would say, situation worse than what it is today.
Okay, time for the designers to put in a bit of overtime on sorting out this conundrum, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So Francis Olajide, yeah, how similar or dissimilar is Recyclas testing and protocols for recyclability? How does it compare with APR in the USA?
I mean, the general definition of recyclability is the same, as I was mentioning in my presentation. I would say on single testing, there are differences, but let me say that the approach is different, meaning that APR is working as an association of plastic recycler, and while in Recyclas, we are working with all the value chain, as you can see. And I would say that to this extent, we are more structured. And of course, even the protocols have been I would say approved and tested also by peer review. So to some extent, it's more structured what we do. And of course, if you compare the single testing methodology, then you can see something which is similar, but of course, you will see also some differences. I would say that the approach is different.
Okay, that's fair enough. And a private question that's been sent through, Casper particularly, challenges for the future. Where do you see the most potential in terms of the balancing act between virgin PET and recycle it? And what are the most effective levers to encourage greater use of recycled?
Potential is a difficult question, but I had once at a presentation, we talked about the price and the supply demand. I said capacity is never a problem. It's only the timing of capacity. And as we are now already challenging the targets, I think it's the timing of those capacities. There was not a question about, was I talking about mechanical recycling? Yes, I was talking about mechanical recycling in the past. The capacities we need to have in the future is also related to chemical recycling. It will be a complementary part to the mechanical one. And it is the timing of those interaction. When do we need this and when we need that? My personal favorite is to say it's a 70-30. Mechanical recycling is the favorite for having the lowest footprint, so we should use that for 70% if you want to make 100% recycling, and 30% is to make it complementary by chemical recycling to do difficult ones. But that's the timing now. If France is building up and all the press releases are there to say, yeah, we're going to build 300,000 tons of chemical recycling. It's only one country, 300,000 tons. I think it's a little bit of crazy situation that one country is taking a lead in such a big step into chemical recycling. But okay, it happens. Let's see how it works. So I think the capacity is maybe not a problem. It's more the issue or the challenge about the timing, if they can feed it at the right rate. So this is where I saw this list with all those timings, and I said, DRS, we're talking about very expensive systems. We're talking about a lot of money, and a lot of people want to talk about it before they are sure what they have for their money. And that's why it takes so long. And this delay. I mean, the interaction, the DRS takes 2 years, a washing line takes 2 years. If they are aligned, then we have an issue.
Okay. Paolo, a final question to you. How long does it take to test a product to see if it meets Recycler standards? And what level of support is there for testing?
I mean, if you look into the specific guidelines and all the features of your specific packaging you would like to test are listed in the design for recycling guidelines, then you have just to get to some auditor and ask for certification. It will take really maybe just a couple of weeks, but it's a very short time, depending of course on the load work of that specific auditor. And the other way around, if some feature is not covered by the guidelines because maybe you're testing or you're using a new technology in your packaging application, then you have to apply to the technical committee. Then you have to run for the application of the testing methodology in the lab, and this could take, I would say, kind of a couple of months to 3 months.
Okay, so it's not too far. It's not too slow. Then it's quite quick, really. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We have to stop now because we've actually slightly overrun our time. Thank you both for very interesting presentations and for being prepared to stay and answer people's questions. Thanks to those who asked the interesting questions. That's great. You can see the link for the recording of this session. It will be up on the PETplanet website next week, and there will be another PETinar coming up in a few weeks' time. And I look forward to seeing you all there again then. So goodbye for now from Salisbury, which is a sunny day in southern England. And thanks for your time. See you again soon. Bye-bye now.
All right, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.